What's up, you guys? Stoops back in with another video, and today I am bringing you another class PvP guide for Battle for Azeroth. Today we are doing an updated version of the Mistweaver. I'm going to go through this guide rather quickly, number one, because I'm really sick and I can feel my voice going out, but number two, I have made a bunch of Mistweaver guides in the past, but there were some significant changes to the class in terms of some balance tunings as of recent, so I want to update all of you. I'm getting a lot of questions on this. Anything I do discuss in this video regarding like add-ons, maybe previous info on another Mistweaver guide, all of the information will be in the description box below. There's a lot of useful tools in that description box for just various questions that you might have, guide related questions, class related questions, just tons of PvP info is in that description tab. So be sure to check it out if you are trying to get better at PvP or Arena. Just like all of my previous guides in the past, I'll give you a quick class overview. I'm going to go into our general talents, but I'll go into them very quickly here. I'll also discuss our PvP talents, which are a little bit different than they used to be after following the balance tunings, and then I will go into things like Azerite traits and gearing. Alright, so hopping right into our general talents first, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, you guys, because I have talked about it a lot in the past, and there's an older video that does break down general talents a little bit more in the description box below, so you can check that out. But for the first bracket, we're just going to take Mist Wrap. It's very strong, still just as powerful as it was in the past, and because Surging Mist got nerfed, Enveloping is even more prominent and more of an ability that you're going to use more often, so I would always spec into Mist Wrap, especially for Arena. Going into level 30, you have Chi Torpedo. That is going to be your primary movement ability. It's still very effective in a lot of scenarios. If you want to spec into things like Tiger's Lust to break hunter routes, or you want to use it to help your allies out a bit more, your melee DPS, or you want to use the actual roll ability rather than Chi Torpedo, you can be a bit more precise with your rolls, like around pillars, and it's a little bit easier when trying to kite away from like a jungle or something. You could spec into that, but the safe pick, just a general pick for beginners, always go Chi Torpedo. Level 45, Manatee, still the way to go to. It's very powerful. When paired with Crane, it's one of the only ways that you can actually effectively use your Wave of the Crane without having any sort of mana loss, and it's good in other scenarios if you're not speccing into Wave of the Crane, so I highly prefer Manatee. Level 60, Ring of Peace is my go-to almost always. I don't like Song of Chi-Ji. You can use it in some scenarios if you feel like your team needs a bit more CC, but there's so many uses for Ring of Peace, like I've talked about in the past. You can use it to knock healers off edges, you can use it to save your allies, you can use it to trap people into walls if they're kind of cornered, you can use it to prevent casts if you want to stop things like Chaos Bolts, Polymorphs. If you want to use it to stop healers from healing, you can just knock them on their heal. It's effective in so many ways and on different maps, and I almost always take this talent. Level 75, you have two options here. Honestly, three. Healing Elixir is like your general go-to now because of sometimes you're not going to always spec into Zen Focus Tea, and you don't want to risk getting locked out trying to heal yourself, and just being able to just double tap Healing Elixir for 30% of your maximum health is very good. But it was nerfed in since Legion, so it's not as effective as it used to be, so you can spec into the other options. I think Diffuse Magic is really powerful versus things like Destruction Warlock sometimes, especially versus the Fire Mage Assassination Rogue matchup. If you're able to use Diffuse Magic if you sense a kidney shot's about to happen, or you're rolling in and you're worried about getting locked out or locked down by the Rogue with a Fire Mage on their combustion, things like that, Diffuse Magic can easily save you and prevent you from having to trinket or die, just flat out explode due to all the damage they're able to deal. That's also a good pick, so either of these are good and they're situational. For level 90 in Arena, Serpent Statue is just absolutely insane still. It's a lot of your healing. It's very powerful. In RBGs and things like that, you can play Invoke Chi-Ji, the Red Crane, but for Arena, Summon Jade Serpent Statue just does too much healing. Just make sure you're repositioning it and make sure it's always actually healing your target. Sometimes if it's out of line of sight or it's too far, it's not going to do the healing, so just be sure to look out for that. For level 100, Focus Thunder is too strong for many reasons, so you're always going to spec into that. It's good paired with Vivify to get free mana cost Vivifies. If you use your Thunder Focus Tea, that's 2 free casts. It's really strong for things like Enveloping Mist. If you pair your Thunder Focus Tea with Enveloping, maybe into a free cast Vivify, that's a lot of bonus healing, and you're saving quite a bit of mana by getting that bonus healing and then not spending any mana on the Vivify. So make sure you read through your Thunder Focus Tea and understand how that works. Also, it's very strong, which I'm sure a lot of you guys know this by now. It's very strong when paired with your Rising Sun Kick because it resets the cooldown on your Rising Sun Kick essentially, which is great with Crane or just to add any additional pressure. Alright, now hopping right into the juicy stuff, a lot of the changes happen here in the PvP talents. For your Trinket option, if you're playing an Orc, best thing to go is just gonna be Gladiator's Medallion. It's a really well-rounded pick. If you are a human monk and you are a little bit more experienced, you can use your human racial and paired with the Relentless. That's also a strong combination versus various comps, but just a general go-to is gonna be your Gladiator's Medallion. Now I have altered my gear here a bit to give you an example of one of your pretty much always locked in talents, and that's going to be Chrysalis. So baseline right now, since 8.1 there was a change to Chrysalis, and baseline without any talent changes at all, Cocoon is a 2-minute cooldown. Now one of the buffs that we saw in 8.1 for Mistweavers was a buff to Chrysalis, reducing the cooldown of your life Cocoon by 45 seconds. So baseline now, when you spec into Chrysalis, it knocks your life Cocoon to 1.3 minute cooldown. Now, they also made a change to one of your Azurite traits. If I go back to my old Azurite traits called Burst of Life, I'll spec into some different ones here. Doesn't matter so much, but if I spec into Burst of Life, it reduces the cooldown of your life Cocoon by 20 seconds, and when it expires, it does a burst healing for a certain amount. Now, this does not stack. The healing bonus will when it explodes or it expires. That will stack if you stack multiple of these traits, but you cannot, stack like reducing it by 20 seconds and 40 seconds. It doesn't work like that. But with Burst of Life, your Cocoon is now a 55-second cooldown. Now, this is a very powerful, probably one of the reasons why Mistweavers are so strong in Arena right now is because before Cocoon, you could kind of throw it out when you feel like you needed it, but now you can almost just throw it out whenever you want. It will line up with any offensive cooldown. You can use it on every single vendetta. You can also use it in between the next vendetta. You can use it for combustion and then another time if you need it. It's a very effective tool that Mistweavers have, and I would almost argue that it's a little overtuned, but for now I think it's a great thing that Mistweavers do have because we kind of lacked defensive cooldowns and all we had was raw healing output, and this puts it on par with things like Bark Skin or Iron Bark, any other defensive cooldown that other healers have. So with Burst of Life, which is one of the traits, a little teaser there, one of the Azurite traits that you're gonna want as a Mistweaver, with that trait and Chrysalis, you're always gonna lock into this combination here with this PvP talent Chrysalis, because Cocoon on a 55-second cooldown is just, why wouldn't you want that? It's such a powerful PvP talent that you just can't afford not to take it. So going down from there, we have Chrysalis, and then now we have Wave the Crane. Wave the Crane is something that is still very strong. It did see a nerf recently in terms of how much damage and healing it was going to do. The mana cost has stayed the same. Wave the Crane is amazing in 2v2s, and it's good in certain 3v3 comps. I think it's almost an always go-to, but since we've seen some recent Resto Druid buffs, so please keep in mind the date of this video. A lot of people don't realize that when they watch a video. Recently, as of making this video, maybe about a week ago or a few days ago, we saw some Resto Druid buffs. Now, Resto Druids are very effective at surviving and dampening. They have a lot of healing output now, and they don't as fast. So Wave the Crane is going to be something that if you use it correctly, you can be very mana efficient. So Wave the Crane paired with Mana Tea, if you use it every single Mana Tea, it's only going to cost 10% of your overall mana, rather than obviously 20% of your overall mana. So you want to pair it with that in 3v3 matchups, but you want to use it at the right time. So it depends on your playstyle. It's not a guarantee lock-in my opinion. For 2v2s, I think it is a guarantee lock-in because you want to add that extra pressure. Even if you're fighting a Resto Druid and you're playing with like a Fury Warrior or like a Rogue or maybe a Windwalker, having that Wave the Crane pressure can end the game much faster. But in 3v3s, if you feel that the game is going to go on for a long time and you don't know how to effectively use your Crane where it's going to provide the most amount of healing output, I guess I'll explain myself. So, for example, sometimes you might not press Crane when your team is actually falling behind, but you're doing it rather to add pressure, and then when the Crane ends, then you have to actually heal through a lot of the damage. Maybe they're waiting to they're CCing you on your Crane, or you're not actually getting a lot of healing throughput through your Crane for whatever reason, and then they're taking a bunch of damage. Well, then you've just wasted 10% of your mana plus an additional however much mana it's going to cost you to heal your whole team up. So you want to make sure that you're timing your Crane right if you want to be mana efficient with it. You want to pair it with other cooldowns that you think you can heal through with Wave the Crane, because essentially it's 10% of your mana to keep your team healed for 15 seconds. That's pretty effective. But if you're not using it in that light, it might not be mana efficient, and it's something that you don't have to take. There's a lot of other effective options to survive in dampening. Again, in 2v2s, you can almost always take it. In 3v3s, You can easily take things like Counteract Magic. You can easily take things like Disarm, even Refreshing Breeze if you want. Dome of Mist is not a bad idea. I don't play Surging Mist anymore. I'll get to that a little bit later, but you can swap out a lot of other options for Wave the Crane, but for now, it's a personal playstyle preference for 3v3s, and I would just say, if you fought somebody before and you feel like your comp can end the match rather quickly with the addition of Wave the Crane, it's going to add that additional burst pressure to get you out of the dampening scenario, then spec into it. If you know for a fact you're going to go into dampening, you don't necessarily have to play it. There's a lot of other great options. Now for your last selection here, Zen Focus Tea is a very powerful option still, because sometimes as a Mistweaver, especially if you're playing with like double melee, and you've been in CC for a while, you only really have 2 buttons, maybe 3, to like save yourself when you get out of CC, right? You have your Cocoon, you have Revival, and then you obviously have Zen Focus Tea. The reason why this is effective is sometimes you can't afford, let's say you get out of CC and there's like a mage on the other team, he polymorphed you, and then you get out of CC and he still has his interrupt available, his counter spell, and you can't afford to sit there and fake cast the entire time. So that might force you to cocoon the target, maybe press Revival, or you can easily press Zen Focus Tea and prevent yourself from getting locked out, and that's very effective. You don't have to spec into this. Once again, there's other great options. This build right here that you see with Chrysalis, Wave the Crane, and Zen Focus Tea is like the general go-to build. It's the general like cookie cutter build, I always say, but there are ways that you can change it around. For 2v2s, if I'm fighting like a Rep Paladin, maybe a Fury Warrior, I might use things like Disarm with Wave the Crane. If I'm fighting like a mage team, I could play things like Counteract Magic and Zen Focus team, a dampening team. This could be a very good dampening spec. You could even spec into things like Refreshing Breeze, but I don't play that much. So it's really up to you and how you want to alter these. Your biggest, like the ones that you're going to swap around the most for other talents are like Counteract Magic, an amazing talent. Wave the Crane, an amazing talent. Your grapple weapon, good in 2v2s in certain scenarios, versus things like Turbo. If you're fighting like a double melee team and you're healing a double melee, if you get locked out or sheared, you can still use your grapple weapon and that will mitigate some of the damage. Eminence, I didn't talk about that. Eminence is very effective versus like teams that you feel like you're going to get trained down, or if you're fighting another Windwalker and you want to try and beat his port timing, versus Hunters to avoid traps. You have a lot of great options here. The one thing I want to talk about is Surging Mist. I don't play this talent anymore. It's not mana efficient. It got nerfed severely. It costs way too much mana. It actually costs more than a Vivify. And then you have to actually stack it up to get the effect of it. And on top of that, they nerfed the healing as well. So they nerfed the mana cost or increased the mana cost, and then they nerfed the healing. You can heal just fine using things like your statue, making sure you're having Renewing Mist up, and then going for like a Thunder Focus Tea, Soothing Mist into an Enveloping for a huge heal, and then using your Enveloping and your Soothing Mist healing to top somebody. And if you need to, you can still use your Vivify. And remember, Vivify, when paired with Thunder Focus Tea, costs no mana. So it's important to use your Thunder Focus Tea now more effectively. I think the class is in a better state personally because I feel like it's a little bit less noob friendly, because before people would just spam Surging Mist like crazy and it would heal for a crazy amount. Now you have to be smart about how you use your Thunder Focus Tea, how you use your Envelopings, your Vivifies, making sure you're maintaining Renewing Mist, making sure you're trying to hold that Soothing Mist if you're able to do so. And then now it's more about your talent options, right? Like Counteract Magic is really good. Cocoon now is on a 55-second cooldown, so if you feel like the pressure is getting like it's too much and you don't want to keep spamming out Vivifies because you're spending too much mana, throwing out a Cocoon is just fine. Using things like Wave the Crane to counteract some of that crazy damage that's going on to top